Hello students, today we will have deliberations on the economy of ancient Greece, which is one of the most fascinating topics of Greek civilization. First, we will look at the objectives of the study. First one will be to understand the ongoing debate about the economy of ancient Greece. The second one would be to understand the varied developments in the ancient Greek economy and to understand how slaves contribute to the growth of the ancient Greek economy. Now, we will first look at the debate on ancient Greek economy. The economy of ancient Greece has been the topic of discussion that continues up to the present times. The debate originated in the late 19th century and centered on the question of whether the economy was primitive or modern. These concepts were a poor choice for conceptualizing the ancient Greek economy and are largely responsible for the intractable nature of the issue. The debate, which was clearly normative in nature, focused on whether the ancient Greek economy was comparable to modern economy, which was never precisely defined but was assumed to be a free enterprise, capitalist system with interconnected price-setting markets. Furthermore, it was unknown whether the ancient Greek economy was comparable to modern economy in terms of quantity, that is size, or quality, or its organizing principles. These phrases attempted to characterize the ancient Greek economy as a whole without making distinctions between Greece's core areas or states, chronological periods, or economic sectors like agriculture, banking, long-distance trade, etc. Modernists thought Greece had a market economy which is differing only from modernistic capitalist state only in degree and not in quality. The trade was good and money was used extensively there as early as in the 5th century BC. In contrast, primitivists rebutted the assumption of widespread trade and the use of money, citing classical Greece social and political norms that hindered the productive, impersonal, and industrial nature of modern market economies. They viewed the ancient world as static and set way with the rural subsistence economies. If the ancient Greek economy had not organized on market principles, neither primitivists nor modernists could imagine extensive trade and the use of money. Furthermore, neither side in the debate could call actions that's economic if they were not productive and growth-oriented. The discussion also included historical methodologies. The modernist interpretation was supported by traditional ancient historians who relied on philology and archaeology. Historians who used new approaches from sociology and anthropology favored the primitivist point of view. Michael Rostrovetsev, for example, compiled a plethora of archaeological evidences to demonstrate that ancient Greek economy during the Hellenistic period was so large that it could not be classified as primitivist. In contrast, Johannes Hasbrouck used Max Weber's sociological techniques to argue that the ancient Greek citizen was a homo politicus, that is, a political man, rather than a homo economicus, that is, an economic man. He despised economic activities and subordinated them to traditional political interests. The use of anthropological approaches by Karl Polanyi to argue that economies do not have to be organized according to the independent and self-regulating institutions of the market system marked a turning point in the debate. He distinguished between substantive economic analysis and formalist economic analysis. The latter, which is a common in modern economic analysis, applies only to market economies. Material products can, however, be manufactured, exchanged, and valued outside of market institutions. Non-economic social and political institutions such as gift exchange or state-controlled redistribution and price settings may be associated with such measures. As a result, alternative analytical methods, particularly substantivist economies, are required to comprehend them. According to Polanyi, ancient Greece did not have a well-established market system prior to the Hellenistic period. Prior to that, the economy of ancient Greece did not have its own set of institutions. It was instead embedded within other social and political institutions. As a result, Polanyi enabled scholars to investigate the ancient Greek economy without regard for the initial normative parameters imposed on the discussion. Unfortunately, the grip of the old parameters has been quite strong, and the argument was unable to escape their influence completely. Now we will discuss about the Finlay's model and its aftermath. Moses Finlay first proposed the ancient Greek economic mode in 1973, which is currently the most widely accepted. This view, which owes a great deal to the Weber-Hasbrouck-Polanyi line of analysis, asserts that the ancient Greek economy was fundamentally distinct from the market economy that dominates at present. Not only was the size of ancient Greek economy significantly smaller than that of modern economies, but its quality was also drastically different. Although the ancient Greek word oikonomia is the origin of modern English word economy, the two are not synonymous. Oikonoma referred to home management, a familial activity that was embedded within the traditional social and political organizations. Although it's true that Greeks produced and consumed goods, participated in various types of exchanges, including long-distance trade and developed monetary systems that employed coinage, the Greeks did not consider these activities to be a part of the institution that we refer to as the economy. According to Finlay's theory, the subordination of economic activities to social and political ones was the result of a Greek value system that prioritizes the welfare of the community over that of the individual. This system only demanded economic efforts to the extent that male citizens had to provide for themselves and their families. This could be achieved through the cultivation of a small plot of land, but the male citizens were expected to contribute to the community's welfare by engaging in the religious, political, and military activities of the polis. In contrast, ancient Greek values placed little value on economic pursuits that were not subordinate to the customary occupations of managing the family farm and acquiring consumable. Manufacturing, business, and trade, and what we would call capitalism, that is, investing money to make more, were deemed incompatible with active participation in the affairs of the polis. The social ideal was a life on the land, producing only what was required for consumption and leaving sufficient time for participation in the polis's public life. Only production and exchange for personal use, to aid friends, or for the greater good of the community are permitted. Such endeavors were not to be pursued solely for financial gains, and especially not to acquire funds for future investment and economic expansion. Due to the constraints imposed on economic activity by traditional values and the lack of a modern perspective on the economy, agriculture dominated production and commerce. As a result, the majority of output occurred in rural areas, and cities were net consumers rather than producers. Living on the surplus of the countryside due to a lack of technology and comprehension of economies of scale. Cities were not industrial hubs, and production was conducted on a small scale. Cities were predominantly residential, religious, and administrative centers. Their contribution to the economy consisted solely of consuming agricultural surpluses and providing exchange markets and ports. The elite of ancient Greek society consisted of landowners who dominated politics, even in democratic cities such as Athens, because the majority of economic income was derived from land and menial occupations were not valued. These men had no interest in manufacturing, business, or trade, and they did not distinguish the economy from social and political concerns. Thus, their official economic policies differed drastically from contemporary states. Modern states pursue policies and specific economic objectives aiming to make their national economy more productive, develop or expand, thereby increasing the per capita wealth of the state. In contrast, ancient Greek city states engaged in economic activities, trade, coin minting, production, etc. These are the economic activities. So that, like oikonomia, at the household level, fulfill traditional social political needs rather than strictly economic needs. According to Finlay's theory, neither market mentality nor interconnected marketplaces could function using impersonal price setting market mechanisms. Certainly, individual states had markets that is being known by the term agorai, but these markets were largely isolated and unconnected. As a result, prices were determined by local conditions and personal relationships as opposed to impersonal forces of supply and demand. This was partially due to the Greek socio-political emphasis on self-sufficiency, but also because the physical environment and industry of the Eastern Mediterranean tended to produce similar goods so that few items ST state required could not be obtained within its own borders. In addition, according to Finlay's model, the interests of Greek city-states in trade were similarly constrained by traditional political concerns to ensure adequate imports of material desires, such as affordable food for their citizens and tax revenues from international trade. The first objective could be met by requiring or encouraging grain merchants to transport grain into the city. These laws were extension of older political strategies such as conquest and plunder, which now employed a less violent acquisition method. Even though the means had changed, the ends remained political. The economy itself was of no interest. The same holds true for the traditional case requirements of city states to find public projects such as temple construction and road maintenance. Finlay model has significantly impacted those who have studied ancient Greek economies, and it remains widely accepted. The model has flaws despite the fact that its fundamental depiction of the ancient Greek economy has not been superseded. Given that Finlay's model attempted to capture the entire nature of the ancient Greek economy, it was inevitable for him to exaggerate. As a result, the model makes few distinctions between different regions or states of Greece, despite the fact, for example, the economies of Athens and Sparta were notably distinct. Finlay treats the various economic sectors like agriculture, labor, manufacturing, long-distance trade, banking, etc., as if they were all equally governed by the model's general tenets, despite the fact that, for instance, there was significant difference between the values that prevailed in the landed economy and those that prevailed in international trade. Lastly, Finlay's model is synchronic and barely accounts for the changing size and quality of the economy over time. Many in-depth analysis of the major sectors of the ancient Greek economy at various times and locations has strengthened the broad principles of Finlay's model. However, many research studies have identified model deviations. Consequently, a recent trend in the academic community has been an effort to modify the Finlay's model in light of studies of specific economic sector and times. An alternative strategy has been employed to disregard the Finlay's model and sidestep the old dispute by studying ancient Greek economics in a manner that renders them irrelevant. Given the quality and quantity of available data, our efforts to comprehend the ancient Greek economy are significantly impacted by the lenses through which we explain it. Now first we will look at the Archaic period. For ancient Greek history, Finlay's approach is best applicable to study the Archaic era. This period stretches from 776 to 464 BCE. Archaeological evidences and literary references from works such as Homer's epic poems, that is of the Iliad and the Odyssey, the work and days of Hesiod, and the works of the lyric poets attest to a small-scale household-centered economy. This is hardly surprising given it was during the Archaic period that the Greek civilization emerged from the Dark Age and established its fundamental social, legal, political, and economic institutions. At this time, the polis or independent city-states emerged along with non-monarchical administrations permitting at least some degree of political engagement among many individuals. With the exception of periodical political upheavals between haves and have-nots, in which land may be stolen from the few and redistributed to the many, government rarely intervened in economic affairs. Although the majority of the Greek mainland is mountainous and the rivers are generally small, there was sufficient fertile land and winter rainfall for agriculture to account for the most economical production, as it did in all pre-industrial civilizations. In contrast to the great kingdom of the Near East, Greece had a market economy and the majority of its land was privately owned. The Homeric epics imply that there was also larger estates possessed by the aristocracy and worked with the assistance of free landless thetes, especially required during harvest. There were slaves, but not so many that the economy and society depended on them. Due to the relatively less population of cities, most craft and manufacturing were performed in households for domestic consumption. However, both literary records and remnant relics reveal that there existed a degree of specialization. Artisans are mentioned in the Homeric epics, and it's unlikely that non-specialists created products such as metalwork and painted pottery due to their high level of craftsmanship. However, without large-scale industry, safety from brigands on land and pirates at sea, and a coinage-based monetary system, markets were unavoidably small, devoted to local goods and not at all integrated into a price-setting market economy. Local trade between the rural and urban centers of city-states dominated commerce. As Hesiod attests, farmers might load their surplus commodities onto a small ship and sell them in a nearby city. Still, long-distance seaborne trade was almost exclusively devoted to luxury items such as precious metals, jewelry, and finely painted ceramics. Furthermore, according to social traditions, gift exchanges were as prevalent as trades for profit, if not more so. Those who engaged in banal jobs full-time and sought to profit from them are often looked down upon and did not hold positions of prestige in society or government. Nonetheless, the size of the Greek economy increased during the Archaic period, if not their per capita income. In proportion to the observable rise in population growth and a need for more territory during this time fueled a colonizing effort that established Greek polis throughout the Mediterranean and Black Sea regions. These new city-states cultivated more land, supplying the agricultural resources required to support the growing population. Furthermore, archaeological evidences for the extensive diffusion of Greek products, particularly pottery, indicate that trade and production have significantly grown since the Dark Ages. After the Archaic period, commercial ships and warships began to divide for the first time, a division that would become permanent. Furthermore, even though several other types of money and barter continued to be in use throughout ancient Greek history until the introduction of coinage in Asia Minor in the early 6th century BC. The Greeks swiftly embraced coinage and it became the primary mode of exchange by the end of the 6th century. David Tende explores the aforementioned economic tendencies in a recent extensive work and concluding that they fundamentally affected the creation of the Archaic polis, social and political organization and ideals. Now we will look at the classical period and its economic sectors. During the classical period of ancient Greek history, which stretches from 480 to 323 BC, an increasing number of deviations from the Finlay model can be observed in many economic areas due to increased population and political developments. Additionally, economic evidences become increasingly abundant and informative. Thus, a complete depiction of the economy throughout the classical period is possible. And greater emphasis on the sectoral disparities is also desirable. Now we will look at the public and private economic sectors. Before the Hellenistic period, a free enterprise economy with private property and low government intervention predominate most of the ancient Greek history. This starkly contrasted to the vast majority of other ancient civilizations in which government or religion dominated the economy. The primary economic priority of the Greek city-states was to preserve harmony within the private sector so that to make laws adjudicate disputes and protect private property rights. Numerous laws protected private property rights in Athens, with officers and legal courts enforcing them. In addition, government supervised weights, measures, and coinage to prevent individuals from being defrauded in the marketplace. Athens also enacted rules to maintain a sufficient grain supply for its residents, including a prohibition on grain export and incentives for grain importation. Athens established agreements with foreign states that granted preferential treatment to grain merchants en route to Athens. In contrast, Athens did not directly tax its citizens except in times of state emergencies and by compelling its wealthiest residents to perform public tasks. Revenue was required for various government expenses, including administrative changes, public festivals, care of widows and orphans, warriors who perished in combat, and construction of ship hulls for the navy, city walls, and temples for the gods. Such public expenditure might have a tremendous impact on the economy, as evidenced by the vast amount of money and labor recorded in the accounts of the Athenian Acropolis construction projects. Now we will look at the land. As in the Archaic period, agriculture was the most important economic sector. Despite the unequal land distribution among the population, the majority of agriculture remained to be performed on a subsistence level by numerous small family farms. Primary crops were cereals, mainly barley and wheat, that were sown on a 2-year cycle. Olives and grapes were also widely produced in Greece in places which were unsuitable for grain production. Agriculture centered on sheep and goats, since these animals could be easily relocated from their winter pasture in the lowlands to higher, cooler, and wetter places in the highland during the warmer summer months. Cattle, horses, and donkeys were also present in significant number. Even though rainfall in ancient Greece was typically adequate to maintain its inhabitants, there is extensive evidence of crop failure, food shortages, and famine. As a result, competition for fertile land was a defining feature of the Greek history and a major source of social and political conflict within and between city-states. Now we will look at labor. It is hard to estimate the population of ancient Athens or any other Greek city-states. Athens was at the height of its power and wealth in 431 BCE, with an estimated population of 305,000 people, of which 160,000 were citizens, 40,000 male, 40,000 female, and 80,000 children. 25,000 were free foreign inhabitants, known by the name of Matics, and 120,000 were slaves. Athens was the greatest polis, and other city-state populations were likely to have been considerably less. Citizens, Matics, and slaves all participated in economic labor. Additionally, many city-states employed varied types of dependent labor that fell between slavery and freedom. Ancient Greek agriculture was mostly practiced by small farmers who were entirely free citizens, as non citizens were prohibited from holding property, even though being a farmer was the societal ideal. External land was uncommon in Greece. It's believed that in Athens, one fourth of male residents did not possess property and were forced to engage in other vocations. These jobs occurred in the manufacturing, services, retail, and trade industries. In addition to being socially devalued, these commercial vocations tended to be small scale. Working for another person was viewed as an insult to freedom comparable to slavery. Hence, wage earning was regarded with great disdain. Thus, free males performing the same labor alongside maids and slaves on Acropolis construction projects were compensated equally. However, wages appear to have been sufficient for subsistence. The foreign born, free non citizen transients, that is known by the term xenoi, were an important part of the ancient Greek economy. It is clear that many but not all of the men who traded over long distance were xenoi. Like matics, they had to pay special taxes but did not have many rights. Slaves were definitely a big part of the workforce in ancient Greece. In fact, Finlay was right when he said that ancient Greece was a slave dependent culture. There were so many slaves, they were so important to the economy, and they were so ingrained in people's daily lives and ideas that the ancient Greek civilization could not have existed in its current form without slavery. Estimators say that there were about 120,000 slaves in ancient Athens, so more than a third of the population were slaves, and there were 3 slaves for every adult male citizen. In Athens, slaves were called chattel, meaning they were their owner's private property and had few or no rights. Manumission is an element of ancient Greek slavery that is sometimes touted as a proof that it was more human than other slavery systems. There is sufficient evidence of slaves being liberated to suggest that manumission was frequent and that many slaves may have hoped for freedom, even though the vast majority of them never really achieved it. Upon emancipation, slaves did not become citizens but rather matics. Despite their distaste for some sort of labor and reliance on slave labor, most Greeks were forced to work hard to survive. However, they did not establish a work ethic and did not view labor as noble, only as a necessity. Now we will focus on the manufacturing in ancient Greece. In ancient Greece, slavery also influenced the manufacturing sector. It's commonly believed that technology and industrial organization stalled in ancient Greece due to the availability of expensive slave labor, which negated the need to enhance them. To increase production, one simply purchased additional slaves. Thus, most manufactured goods were crafted by hand using basic equipment. The greatest production facility we are aware of was a 120 slaves shield factory owned by the matic Cephalus, the father of the orator Lysias. The majority of production occurred in small enterprises or homes. Consequently, the industry formed a minor portion of the ancient Greek economy compared to agriculture. Nonetheless, literary and archaeological evidences attest to the production of a variety of manufactured products, some of which were produced in considerable quantities. Archaeologists have discovered sherds of clay pottery throughout the Mediterranean region, making it one of the most widely produced items. The wheel-made vessels came in a variety of shapes suited to their content and functions, including hydria for water, amphoria for olive oil and wine, pithoi for grain, aribelloi for scent, and kylikes for drinking cups. Additionally, beautifully painted jars were produced for ornamental and religious issues. Corinth, Aegina, Athens, and Rhodes produced the best, most numerous, and most extensively distributed examples. During the classical period in Athens, it's evident that manufacturing was highly specialized and that of number of commodities produced was significantly more than what could have been produced in a strictly home economy. Nonetheless, the size and management of production were a long cry from that of industrialized societies of recent centuries. With this, we will conclude this lecture. Thank you so much.